All right, so we're back with another. I don't know what to call it. I guess we wouldn't call it a podcast. A short episode of mental games slash efficiency games slash other stuff. Okay, here we go. All right. Today's we're gonna do how to take notes in game effectively. This will be a short video, but we're gonna be talking about what not to do when taking notes, what to do when taking notes, which notes should you not take, which notes should you definitely take. There's not too much to talk on this subject, so it'll be fairly short. But let's get into it. Let's get right into it. So this is something we see a lot. In all the coaching sessions I do personally. When we're doing live grinds, you got to move back a little bit longer. We almost saw it. I want to do live.
Get out of the way there. I'll let Biggie tell the story.
There it is. Relax and take notes, but not too many notes, as we'll talk about here in today's.
Do not take tokes from the marijuana smoke. Don't do that when you're grinding.
This is gonna be. By the way, this episode is gonna be tough because this one's gonna be tough so far with the because we're thinking about getting Spanish subtitles for our videos. Whoever's gonna do subtitles, they're gonna be in trouble already. But yeah, so as far as taking notes goes, here's what I see. So when I do Fish Friday sessions, I see that some people are missing very clear notes that should be taken. Like something completely off the walls happens, no note is taken or something like that. Or I see that people are taking notes of things that should not be taken note of. So we're going to talk about that here today. So let me just start this one off here. For example, let's say you're playing a reg, right?
Okay.
And this reg ISO jams 7-6 suited for 18 big blinds.
Yes.
Now the question becomes, should you take a note? That's the question. Should you take a note on that? And I have an opinion. Maybe Scott has a different one. Scott, should a note be taken there? What do you think? What is your stance on that? And why or why not?
If you'd have asked me before, like maybe a year ago, maybe a bit longer, I'd have said, yeah, like I'm going to take a full note of that. So ISOG 17 BB 7-6 suited.
Okay, so now your answer is no, it sounds like. So why not?
No.
Why not?
Okay. I'll try to put this as concisely as possible. Knowing that is not going to affect my play. So I now only take notes I take more generalized notes than like did XYZ on XYZ, right? I try to be more generalized. I used to take reams and reams of notes. You know that I used to take essays. It was a big problem for you.
It was. We're going to talk about that in a second too, by the way, after you're done.
Okay, so the answer, do I take a note on 7-6? No. It's in the ranges. It's pretty normal. 1/3 or shove, both are pretty close. It doesn't, in my opinion, it doesn't require a note. It's just not going to change the way that I play against this opponent, and that right there is the threshold for me.
That's the threshold where I think I think that's the answer that I was looking for. That's the answer that I look for as well. So if you're taking a note, if you're watching this and you're taking a note in game, but there's nothing you can do, there's no adjustment to be made from that note, then the note is useless. So if a reg ISO jam 7-6 suited for 18, 20 big blinds, whatever it is, there's no adjustment to be made. That's a proper GTO play. So if you see a huge deviation from GTO, then a note should be taken. And I'll give you an example. Let's say, for example, you're playing a reg and he double barrels in a certain spot. Like the texture doesn't matter that much. It matters obviously, but let's say he double barrels in a certain spot. And then the river comes, which is, let's say, a great bluffing card, and he checks the river, and he has the perfect hand to bluff, like maybe the best bluff in his range. Now, there's a couple ways to take a note of that. You can say, for me, the way I would approach that situation is not writing out the whole scenario, which I think Scott was saying that he used to do. Like, this was the board texture, he bet this on the flop, this sizing on the turn, and then the river was this card, and he didn't bluff this hand, which is fine if you do it that way. I don't necessarily think that's something wrong, but
actually, can I just quickly? I do think that's. I
wouldn't say it's wrong. I don't think it's as efficient as it can be. I wouldn't say wrong. I think there's a more effective way to jot down what happened there. But for me, like, you might jot it down a different way. Like for me, what I would write is, I would take a note, under bluffing, rivers ? Missed a clear river bluff. I would write something as concise as that. Missed a clear river bluff, possibly under bluffing rivers ? I'll have to see, because maybe he missed that one spot. He might take another spot. I don't know yet. So that's the kind of note I would take there. Whereas, like, I have it very firm that he missed a clear bluffing spot, but I don't know if he's an under bluffer in general just yet. Maybe he just didn't like that spot for a specific reason. Maybe he timed out. I don't know. Whatever. I want to see a couple more hands, showdown before I make a very firm conclusion there. So basically, you want to be taking notes on things that are very, very outside GTO, let's call it. Like a very clear, adjustment from GTO. So if something is like even close to GTO, I'm not going to take a note. I'm just not going to take anything. And then obviously when you're playing recreationals or fish or whatever, there are some very clear things that are outside, deviating from GTO or something, like, the fish like open jams, donk open jams 2x pot with like second pair or whatever. That's an obvious note to be taken. That's a very simple note to be taken. The main point for me being is that sometimes people take notes of things that they don't matter, right? He probed second pair on this run out. Like, what are you going to do about it? You're not going to do anything about that. And what happens is, some people might be like, oh, well, then what's the harm in writing the note anyways? And the harm is that when you're in game and you're playing somebody, there's nothing more flustering than like being in a spot, opening your note tab, and seeing notes from here to here that don't matter, and you're trying to navigate through and find something that does matter in there, and you can't do it because there's just so much going on. It's like the same thing as having like an extremely complicated HUD. You're trying to navigate it, and you're like, where am I looking? What am I doing? So with notes, I think it's very important to keep it very simple. If there's an actionable adjustment to be made, then take a note of what something did. There has to be an actionable adjustment that you can make, and then you take that note. When we go back to 7-6 suited, you're not going to do anything differently, so there's no note to be taken. Like, for example, but if somebody is showed down, like, let's say you're playing a reg over and over again, and he continues showing down on the river, and he keeps checking 7-6 suited, 6-5 suited, all these hands, and not jamming them and not ISOing them, that's a note to be taken, right? Let's say you're playing this reg and you notice, like, this guy is never jamming 7-6 suited, he's never jamming 8-7 suited, he's never ISOing those hands, and you keep catching him in these check down pots on the river with these hands. Now you take that note, because now you can limp wider, because he's obviously ISOing a lot less, and also obviously when he ISO jams, you got to be calling tighter as well. So there's an adjustment to be made. You take that note. So there has to be a very clear adjustment. It's as simple as that. You need to have a very clear counter move to what he's doing for a note to be taken, and make the note as short and as concise and, in my opinion, as general as possible, so that in game you can easily navigate to it, like, right away. the first thing you open, you open your note under bluffing rivers, not XXXX this hand and XXXX, and you have like 6 different things, and you got to kind of figure it out. This guy's under bluffing rivers. That's all you really need to know. And that'll help you, adjust your game or whatever. So